Consumables have been a staple in many video games throughout the years, and the utility and renewability of all these said consumables varies from genre to genre. The most common consumables you see in games today can range from ammunition for your gun, to dogs that sniff your greasy, grotesque, and goopy ass from across the map, and elixirs and foods that can grant you temporary buffs while fighting enemies. Out of all the consumables out there, Call of Duty killstreak utilities are probably the most fun and easy to understand. It's pretty simple. To unlock these consumable utilities, you need to earn a certain amount of kills in a row or kills in a match, and once you reach that threshold, you get to bombard the other team and they can't do anything about it besides run. And that's pretty entertaining to watch. Putting all your effort into racking up tons and tons of kills over a match just so you can launch a singular nuke, obliterating everything in its path in seconds. Not only is mowing down waves of enemies at once, or mowing down a crowd of newly spawned players on the other team rewarding in itself, but it also builds up to the climax of these special abilities you can get. Games like Overwatch and COD do these the best in my opinion. It's just so enthralling to feel that pump you get in your heart after launching your first ever nuke in COD, or clutching an Overwatch game by getting a perfectly timed diva ult. While most consumables in first-person shooter games are fun and all, let's now move on to the more valuable consumables. During my playthrough of many games with somewhat challenging bosses, you could either farm dungeons or kill enemies to get better loot, so you're better equipped to fight the boss. For what I did in my playthrough for Breath of the Wild, I used elixirs and food buffs to help me cheese my way through bosses that were a hell of a lot stronger than me. And looking back after finishing the game, I now think that these consumables made the game way too easy. If I wanted to kill a Lionel that could crush my puny Link into the floor with ease, I could just as easily go into my inventory, whip up an overpowered stew, and eat it, and then immediately hop back into the game and kick the shit out of the Lionel. And if I happened to get hit, I could just go back to my menu, eat a whole meal right there, mid-fight, with the game being paused, unpause the game, and then just kick his ass, restoring all of my health and then some. Of course, to be able to access these locations early on in the game to get to the desired scarce resources that make these meals and grant these additional powers, it was pretty challenging, and that's about where the challenge stops. Once you find the location that you know for certain you can get this overpowered food to make an overpowered meal, the challenge stops there, and that sucks. Really sucks. But then again, if the locations for these items were placed randomly, I would probably also complain. But the real way I think Nintendo could have easily fixed this exploitable loop would be to simply force you to eat in real time. Not to make you spend 5 minutes eating a meal, but depending on the value that the meal gave you, it would take longer to consume. And coupling this with you having to eat outside of your menu where the game is unpaused, they could easily fix this overpowered and game-breaking issue. If I handed you a bottle and told you that you could use it anytime you want and it would give you the power to be untouchable by any means of harm, whether that be a nuclear strike or spraining your ankle, but this effect only lasted for 5 minutes, what would you do? This is the question lots of dungeon crawling games ask you over and over, and most gamers' responses are to save this item for the perfect moment, constantly dying to what most people perceive as the easiest boss in the game. You want to drink the essence of this bottle so bad, but you don't because you fear you would be wasting it. And if as a gamer, you make the mistake to never drink that mysterious bottle, you will most likely get stuck in a loop. I call this loop the Hoarder's Loop. Yes, I did just make that bullshit up. But basically what the loop is a state that the player gets themselves into by receiving the power-up or a one-time use consumable that the game gives you, and it tries to get you to use on a certain task that comes after you receive the item, so you can defeat the boss or task a lot easier. But the player thinks, oh, look at this awesome power-up, I'm gonna save it for the perfect moment. And by the time they are done thinking when they should use this item throughout their playthrough, the time they should have already used that item has passed. This creates a lot of frustration after you beat the game, having all these consumables and money you never spent, because you wanted to, quote, save them for the perfect moment, when that moment never really existed. After playing a game like OMORI that wants you to use consumables you've purchased or received throughout the game, I think I have broken this cycle for myself. And I think the way OMORI goes about this, to entice you to use its consumables, is amazing. Throughout your exploration of this ever-changing and mysterious map OMORI has to offer, after defeating enemies, much like Pokemon, they will give you money, called Clams. And once you reach a new area in this game, your eye gets immediately caught by this seemingly random placed mailbox. And once interacting with said mailbox, it turns into a shop that allows you to spend your saved clams. You can buy items that revive dead characters in fights that are vital to later points in the game, and during boss fights, food and other consumables can turn the tables at any time. And during these fights, when all of your characters are on very low health, and you know there is no other option to either lose your progress in the battle or use a consumable. This moment in my head clicked. That broke me free of this hoarding cycle. And once you go into your inventory and see how many items and consumables you accidentally hoarded subconsciously, you rush to eat that first piece of food, and it gets you back into the game, saving your team and sealing your victory in that fight. To wrap this up, consumables have been around in video games for a long time, and they aren't going anywhere. But I think there are some instances that these consumables can be easily exploited to cheese even the hardest fights in the game. In other instances, confuse the player, leading them to hoard items they should have used seconds after they were given it. And after beating that game, they realize that they shouldn't have been such a stubborn little hoarder, because now they are left with bunches of money and consumables they have no use for. And sometimes I think that game devs have a disconnect on when they should know the right time to use these precious items, because the game devs already know when the player should use them, but the player does not. So more often than not, the game devs think it's obvious to the player that they should use the items they are given, but the players are oblivious. And I think the best way for games to make that connection to the players, besides outright giving them prompts, is to make the consumables time-locked, or have a certain item that replenishes after save points in the game. Like in Enter the Gungeon, a top-down bullet hell shooter, where you play the role of whipping through dungeons. At the start of every dungeon, you are given 2 blank rounds, and the player has a safety net to fall back on, knowing if you die, they will still have those 2 blank rounds no matter what. And once you start using your blanks more, you subconsciously start using other consumables as well. And the fact the game is very challenging, you have to rely on consumables to ensure that you can defeat the boss and advance to the next floor, definitely cements the idea of using consumables in a certain time frame. Thank you for watching this video, stick around for more to come, and I hope I was able to convey my message properly throughout this. Again, thank you and have a good one.